Hi everyone, I'm Volka and I'm developing the cozy farming game Kohlrabi Starship that lets you explore different planets and turn your home desert green. This month I added the first NPC and a dialogue system to my game. Quite a few of you suggested using AI, so in this video I want to share a bit my view on AI and how I use it for game dev. AI art is everywhere recently. If you go on DeviantArt, it seems like half of it is generated. ArtStation, another art website for professional artists, recently allowed you to mark art not to be used for training. Many artists are understandably upset that their art is used to train AI. And then on the other hand, a lot of other people like research scientists and developers are super excited about the future possibilities of this technology. If you're not an artist, it is very exciting to be able to generate your own art by simply providing the idea. And since I'm somewhat both, I feel very torn on this topic. Some of the more well-known image generation AIs are Dolly, Midjourney, or Stable Diffusion. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that explain the methods behind these AIs, so I'm not going to go into that. But Stable Diffusion, for example, was published as open source, so anyone can use it or take a look to understand these methods or implement their own. For others like Midjourney, there's a little bit less information available. But the most important thing is that this kind of AI needs huge datasets to learn how to create art. For Stable Diffusion, this dataset is called Lion 5B, and as an artist you can actually check if you are included. So I went ahead, I was curious, and wow, turns out my art was used as well, and I'm not sure how to feel about it. Many of these AIs, like Midjourney, have a subscription model, so they basically make money based on art that they do not have the copyright for. Even if large websites like ArtStation allow you to mark your art as not to be used in a dataset, that is basically useless. It only needs one person to repost your image somewhere else, let's say on Pinterest, or use it for their profile pic, and then the web crawler will find it. On one hand, some people argue that AI is just like a person. It's taking inspiration from many images and then creating their own art, and I can see the point. But then on the other hand, we do not know which references a generated image uses, and there have been quite some cases where people post their generated art and it turns out to be almost identical to an existing work. If you use it to recreate a living artist style, I guess you do it because you like their work, but you're basically taking what they created and improved on often over decades and generating more of it without needing them anymore. And if this is done in a professional environment, it means that these artists lose commissions and jobs. So I think all of this is important to consider before deciding to use AR blindly in your game dev project. I personally don't believe AI art is evil incarnate and should never be touched. And I love playing around with Midjourney, it's super impressive, but I also decided to use AI as a brainstorming tool and not use the generated art itself. Just like I would search for reference images on the web, I'd ask Midjourney for some inspiration and then create my own art. And if you don't care about these things, then there's still the quality aspect. AI art is quite impressive, but for a game project, you need assets in a consistent style with some specific properties like resolution or a transparent background and so on. And I feel like AI art is not quite there yet, but with the progress we see, this might change in a year or so. Who knows? So this is how I use AI to create my own first character for the game. I made a lot of reference images in Midjourney. I wanted a female character with some desert-style clothes with a thrift look. I also wanted a large witch hat to give shade from the sun. And I wanted her to give off a vibe of a young village elder. I couldn't get Midjourney to give me desert clothes and a witch hat in one, so with the inspiration I got, I went to work. First, I start with a very rough sketch. I'm not sure I mentioned it yet, but I'm using an iPad and Procreate for all my art, and I'm completely in love with these tools. Anyway, I focus on proportions and overall shapes. By not spending time on any details yet, I can make changes very fast. Especially when I add color, you can see that I'm changing them a lot throughout the process until I'm happy with the color scheme. I'm playing around with the idea of longer hair in the back, but in the end I decide against it. Once I feel I'm sufficiently close to what I have in mind for the character, I start with the detailed outlines. I really enjoyed working on my first NPC because designing characters is what I have always loved the most in art, and it's playing to my strength. I was wondering for a while which style to choose for my characters. I already have the small player character, and a cute Harvest Moon style with very young looking characters might fit that well. Then I was thinking a style like Stardew Valley, which is a bit more neutral with more adult and sometimes darker characters, would fit the darker themes I have as well. Or I could maybe go even more dark and bold like in Hades. In the end, I love working with an anime style. It's one of my favorites, and I think it will fit the game well. It allows for cute but also darker characters and plays to my strength and is in general quite popular. You can also see that I sometimes add guideline sketches. For example, the upper body is covered in a lot of clothes, so to get the anatomy just right, I sketch it out on another layer and change the color to red. It helps me figure out the position of the arms and where to place the clothes on the shoulders. I also decided that I will go with somewhat rough outlines. If you look closely, you can see that they're not super polished. For other art I did in the past, I would spend a lot more time to get clean and smooth lines. But for the game, I need to create lots of characters and different expressions for each, so saving half the time for getting 90% of the quality seems to be a good trade-off here. By the way, this is one of the first characters you will meet in the game. She has a small shop and is very well connected with the other villagers and well liked. She acts like an unofficial mayor. But I don't have a name for her yet. If you want, let me know your ideas in the comments. After finishing the outlines, I block in the colors. In this step, I'm also heavily relying on the sketch I made, and I pick the colors from there. I start with simple base colors. Choosing colors is always a somewhat intuitive process, but if you are new to art and have no idea how to choose them, a good first step is to focus on the feel. Like, warm colors go well with the desert here. Cool colors would create a nice contrast instead, and might go well with someone visiting from space. Desaturated colors might hint at a more introverted character, and bright neon might fit well for an outgoing one. But whatever you choose, even if your colors are all over the place in this stage, it doesn't matter too much because there are a lot of ways to make the design more cohesive later. I keep different colors on different layers and then lock their alpha channel, which lets me quickly paint in shadows and light for each. In this case, I chose to have one shadow color and one light color on top of the base. It's important here to keep the direction of the light consistent for every part. Reusing similar highlight colors can unify the design. I also changed the color of the outline slightly to get a softer look. Additionally, I add very saturated outlines to the borders of the lighter areas for a bit of pop of color. For the eyes, I'm working on top of everything else, even on top of the line art. They are always the most important part to get right. You can see that I gave the character a lot of bright blue jewelry. I find that it always looks nice to break larger areas of more subdued colors with specks of saturation. And since she has blue eyes, repeating the color elsewhere brings also a good balance. In general, I am using a lot of repeating colors everywhere, which brings everything together. If you design a character with lots of different colored clothes, you can always make it look cohesive with using, for example, the same color for highlight, or repeating colors in smaller decorations, or reflecting colors off of each other. That, the last one, I did here as well. Since we have a strong desert sun shining on the head, the red color of it will scatter onto the face below. So I just added that color with a soft brush to the face. At the end, I add a thick outline. This will help the characters stand apart from the background in the game. I add it on a different layer so I can remove it if needed. I also created a small-sized version of the character which will walk around in the game. I designed it to fit with the style of the player character, and I simplified the shapes and colors. Let me know what you think of the design and if you want to see more of these in the future. At this point, I took a small break from making the game. I'm at a Swiss Comic-Con called Fantasy Basel to sell some of my art. I'm here in the artist alley and it is very early in the morning and the doors haven't yet opened for visitors. It's one of my favorite events of the year, and if I'm lucky, I can sell some art to support me working longer on the game. We are almost at the table. There it is, with all my art. And some advertisement for Kohlrabi Starship. By the way, if you want to support my journey and the game, the single best help you can give me at the moment is to wishlist on Steam, since it increases visibility so much once the game will come out. Link is in the description. My cats were super happy when I was back. I always miss them when I'm gone for a couple of days. So I had my character, but next I needed a dialogue system. And for that I started with localization. Some people might say, "But Volka, you barely have a playable game and are wasting time with already translating your game into different languages? Is that wise?" To that I say yes it is. Imagine having a game with lots of dialogue. You attach dialogue to NPCs, to tools, to menus, everywhere. And then, after you finish the game, you decide to translate it. And you'd have to hunt down every text you ever wrote, make sure you don't miss one, and create a system that replaces your text with different language options. That is a lot of work. I know I want to finish this game, so spending a few extra days now to avoid possible weeks of extra work at the end is well worth it. Unity now has an inbuilt package for localization. It is quite easy to use and set up, and instead of using text directly in the game, I have a variable which links to the text in the localization table, and then chooses the one in the correct language. Next, for each dialog bubble you see on the screen, I create a scriptable object. It will keep all the necessary information, like the variable of the text for the localization table, an optional NPC name and an image, the sound for the voice, and so on. Most importantly, if you have several dialog bubbles following each other, it also contains a reference to the next one. I then also have a dialog trigger. These can be colliders with a trigger or when you press a certain button. They link to the first bubble of a dialog and activate the UI display. In the UI script, I handle how and where everything is displayed on screen, and the speed of the dialogue and displaying one letter at a time is also handled there, as well as the sound. I had a lot of fun with the voice. I started to test this system with my own voice, so I recorded 5 different letters like A, O, M, and then I changed the pitch somewhat randomly for each letter. There are a lot of nice tutorials on YouTube that explain some of these things in much more detail. I link them in the description. And that's it for this month. Subscribe if you want to see more in the future. Bye bye!